Hey guys, this week we're going to go deeper on the topic of organizing your fabric. In the last video, I took you on a tour of my sewing room and I showed you how I had been storing my fabric in that space. And I had quite a bit of fabric in there, but I also had a lot of fabric that I wasn't able to fit in that configuration on those shelves. So after a lot of discussion and some more research, I've come across some new ways to set up and store that fabric. So let's take a peek here. You can see how I had it set up before. And as we span across, you can see I just had fabric folded as organized as I could, pretty much just by color. And now as we take a look at the after and the current setup I have, you can see it's a much more streamlined look. I still have it organized by color, but I was able to put in more than twice as much fabric into the same amount of shelf space. Now the exciting part about this for me is I'm pretty frugal, and when I first looked into what to do with the fabric on those shelves, the storage system that I saw was boards created specifically for fabric with slits in them so you could tuck the ends in. They were pretty thick, but they averaged about $16 for 3 boards. So that was a little bit much when I thought of all the fabric that I had and how to put that across all the shelves. Then I heard some discussion about using comic boards for the same type of storage. So I researched it a little bit. There was a lot of discussion amongst the group and some people were sharing examples of how they had used it. So I went on and got some comic boards that fit the dimensions of my shelves from Amazon. So the ones that I got, I'm going to set sideways into the shelf, and then I can leave my shelf set up for the most part as they currently were. There's 2 sizes of comic boards, and then there's another size which is called a magazine board. And these are inserts for a collectible comic or magazine that just stiffen it. It's just like a thicker piece of cardboard that slides into those storage for those types of things, but we're using it for fabric. So to begin, I marked out on my cutting table the dimensions of the board. I figured this would be the easiest way to get the fabric all folded consistently. So I used blue painter's tape and I marked out the dimensions that were about 7 inches across. And I used that. I set the boards on there to create the even spacing. And then I just used that as a guide and I folded my fabric like tri-folded or sort of accordion folded until it fit inside those lines. Then I would go ahead and set the board on the fabric about 5 inches in from the first end, and then I would just roll that around the board and continue pulling it tight as I rolled until I had a nice smooth mini bolt of fabric. And you can pin the end, or you can just tuck it in when you slide it into your shelf, and the pressure of all the pieces against each other will keep them from coming unfolded. It depends on the fabric. Most of the fabrics that I had that were just wovens or quilting cottons didn't need to be pinned to hold them in place, but some of the other fabrics like linings or silkier type fabrics, I would secure with a pin at the end just to hold it as I was trying to move it from folding to up on my shelf. Then I continued with that process on the fabric that I currently have and just continued to stack it, color coordinating it as I went, and realized I had a bunch more space. So then I went through some of my other bags of fabric that I showed previously. Any pieces that were wide enough to be folded around those boards, I incorporated into my wall storage. Then I moved on to my second challenge, which was all the small pieces of fabric that I have left over from a variety of projects. And many of those pieces are maybe 2 or 3 inch strips or something to that effect, smaller than a fat quarter. So I was trying to figure out what to do with those. And then I came across these really cute little shelf type block units. And right when I saw them, I just thought, oh, this would be super cute. I'm gonna just cut the existing comic board that I have to fit inside these little cubes and basically create a mini version of my own storage. So I have a section in my shelf where I have a few dolls on display. So I have the doll standing there, and right next to her or slightly behind her are these two little containers that look like she's in her own sewing room or a fabric store, and the bolts that are folded there are scaled to her size. So it's a fun way to incorporate the doll scale idea with functional storage in my space. And I don't have a lot of dolls in my space. I have a few and some of my favorite or current outfits out on display. I think doll storage and doll clothing storage is probably a whole nother topic that we can touch on in a future week. So for the mini fabric scrap storage, I cut the cardboard to fit into those cubes, and I did two different styles. I have laying flat, so they'll just stack right on top of each other, and then standing tall, and I'm just gonna alternate within the 3 cubes how they go, just for some visual interest. And then based on the pieces that I have, some are long strips and actually wrapped perfectly right around there without needing to be folded at all. And others I would fold until I had enough solid area that I could wrap or fold around a board to tuck it either flat or standing up. So this works really great for a lot of the small pieces that I have. And like I said, I'm very visual. So as long as it's out in the open and I can see it, I'll remember to use it. Now, another type of fabric storage that I think is important to talk about is types of fabric that do better hanging, that they really shouldn't be folded because they easily crease, and then you have issues with how you can cut out your pieces on those fabrics because of the fold lines that can't really be ironed out. And some of them don't fold very well anyway, like tulle or laces and stuff like that. So I came across some ideas, of course, on Pinterest where people are draping the fabric over hanging file folders. So you can do this with legal size hanging files or just letter size, depending on a configuration that you have. So I first attempted this in my actual filing drawer where I have legal size files, and I liked the way it was coming together, but then I realized, because of how my head works, once I closed that drawer, I'm pretty sure I would have forgotten entirely that I even had that fabric. So then I kind of thought through some of the things that I had and other ways I could incorporate that up onto my wall. And I remembered that I had some clear acrylic desktop file containers. So I've gone ahead and taken those acrylic containers and some hanging file folders that I had, and I've color coordinated some specialty type fabrics. So you can see on here, there's a variety of different fabrics coordinating by color. I only have 2 of these boxes currently that are clear and see-through. And for me, that works really well because I can still see what I have. I do have some other boxes that are solid that from the top, I would be able to see the fabrics that I have draped over those file folders. It's probably not as good for how my head works and how I like to keep things out in front, out in the open, but it is functional and it does work for the with the supplies that I have right now. So I have both of those incorporated into my wall unit and onto my shelves. This is also a really great use for the leather fabrics that I had, and I showed those quickly in the last video. I had them laying up high on one of my shelves, just laying flat all on top of each other. And honestly, I have done a lot of projects where I could have used those making different jackets or something, and I forget that I have them because they were up out of the way, not in my view. So I have some of those now in those clear acrylic containers, and that puts it out in front of me, easy to remember, easy to use. So now that I have all my fabrics organized and out and ready to sew, I have no excuses. I'm ready and I'm excited to dive back in and start creating some projects. I hope this has inspired you and motivated you to get your fabric organized. There's nothing better than walking into your sewing space and having nothing there to hold you back. It's clean, it's organized, and it's ready to go, and you can just jump in and start sewing.